is absolutely wild. In the same day, we've got one side suggesting that Elon Musk could be Donald Trump's best idea yet, while on the other hand, there's now a call to have Elon Musk arrested. Let's try to understand what's going on here and why is everybody talking about Elon all of a sudden. So let's get started. First, the Wall Street Journal editorial board, which it's worth noting, that's an opinion piece, and it doesn't necessarily represent the opinion of the Wall Street Journal, but it's done by a group of people who work at the Wall Street Journal, and they give opinions on popular topics or whatever. They argue that Donald Trump's best idea yet is unleashing Elon Musk on the government. They go as far as arguing that the last time we've seen something like what Elon Musk is proposing, running a government efficiency commission, was back in the 80s. And the last time we did it in the 80s, we saved a whole lot of money. Now, it's worth noting that the Wall Street Journal editorial board isn't all in favor of everything that Donald Trump is proposing, but they love the idea of Donald Trump saying, quote, "I will create a government efficiency commission tasked with conducting a complete financial and performance audit of the entire federal government." Some of the things that are expected would be identifying and cutting out fraudulent payments coming from the government to people applying for payments they're not entitled to, whether that's welfare fraud, whether that's employee retention tax credit fraud, or many of the other forms of Medicare or otherwise fraud that goes on. Or I should say, in addition to that, there could also be ways of evaluating government spending when it comes to taxpayer efficiency, infrastructure spending, defense spending, Pentagon spending, job training at the government, you name it. And the Wall Street Journal editorial board says, who better to do this than Elon Musk, who has done so much more than NASA at his company, SpaceX. Somebody who knows efficiency. Now, this stands entirely in the opposite of this now call to arrest Elon Musk, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But just to think about this for a moment, I dug into this a little bit. Back in the 80s, Reagan had something known as the Grace Commission. The Grace Commission made 2,478 recommendations to the Reagan administration at the time to help save the U.S. government a boatload of money. Now, I'm going to throw some numbers out here, just trigger warning, they're big. The Grace Commission projected that their recommendations would save $424 billion over 3 years, which is over $1.28 trillion in today's dollars, and $115 billion and $84 immediately, which is about 348 in today's dollars, basically like $1.5 trillion in savings, and even more than that, potentially twice as much of that by the year 2000, so over about a 16-year period. In other words, it would save a whole heck of a lot of money. And the Wall Street Journal editorial board says, at a time when our budget deficits are at record highs, every single year we're in the freaking red, the federal debt is so far over $30 trillion and growing so rapidly, and our expenses going to debt have gone so parabolic thanks to, well, frankly, interest rates being as high as they are. A lot of folks are saying this is exactly what the government needs at this time. Now, that doesn't stop somebody from saying Elon Musk should be arrested, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I do think it's worth taking a peek at just how bad the debt is. United States debt expense. Let's give that a look. And let's take a look at the chart. First, we'll look at the total debt, and then we'll look at the interest payments. All right, you ready for that? No, wrong button. There we go. Federal debt. Total public debt right now, $34.8 trillion. Look at that explosion over here. And I understand we had a big explosion during COVID. I mean, we basically went from $23 trillion to 28 like instantaneously in the span of roughly a year, which is crazy. I mean, for that amount of money, it feels instantaneous. But we've added on even more than that. I mean, we did $5 trillion in the year after COVID. And then since then, we've added on another $6 trillion. It's insane. But anyway, then when you look at the current interest payments, look at this federal government current expenditures, interest payments. Look how these interest payments have absolutely exploded. It's no wonder Jerome Powell says the U.S. government is on an unsustainable fiscal path. Now, it is worth looking at this. We're going to type this in, okay? Debt payments as a percentage of GDP, United States, okay? This gives you a little bit more of a benign take, but it shows you that as a percentage of our gross domestic product, we're not that horrible, but we're definitely at all-time highs as a percentage of GDP, which is not great. It's definitely legged up. It hasn't legged up as much as I feel like some of the other numbers, which have started to go parabolic, but it's definitely a problem. So that's a total number of debt. Now, another thing you could look at is outlays. Now, this is going to be interest. So how much as a percentage of GDP are we actually paying in interest? This one's actually the least bad. Look at this. We were actually worse off in the 90s. How is that possible? It's crazy. Higher interest rates on more government debt for longer, right? Now, obviously, if rates stay higher for longer, we will quickly surpass these peaks over here. But interestingly, right now we're paying just under 2.5% of our total gross domestic product on interest. A few ways to get rid of debt, and then we're going to talk about the arrest of Elon Musk. A few ways to get rid of debt is you can spend less, which is a nice way to get rid of debt. Just spend less and then pay off your bills, which is a good idea. That's option one. Another option is you could actually just innovate and grow the economy. When the economy grows larger and faster, you get more inflows, and that gives you more tax receipts, which means you could reduce the debt. And the other way to go with it is just inflate it away, basically make the underlying value of the money worth less over time, and then it becomes easier to pay off. Like the debt that we had, the total public debt that we had in the 80s, for example, under $1 trillion of debt is worth a whole lot less than it is today. It's like 1/3 as much as it's actually worth today, because the dollar has lost so much purchasing power, which is why people are enthused about like gold or Bitcoin or otherwise. It's a different topic though. So interesting, not bad. It is also worth noting that federal government trust has fallen to just 22%, which is near a historic low trust in government. And the Grace Commission from that Reagan administration reported that 1/3 of income taxes are just literally wasted or burned on inefficiency. Another third are lost to the underground economy, and then the other third goes to interest on debt, transfer payments, and then presumably a growth of debt for paying things like defense and other federal outlays, infrastructure and whatever. But they basically make this argument that if 1/3 is gone due to the underground economy and 1/3 is gone due to inefficiencies, you're basically wasting 2/3 or the vast majority of the money the government actually collects, which then makes you wonder, like, pretty much what you're collecting from people is just getting lit on fire, and you should just, like, figure out how to run the government more efficiently and stop taxing people so much. What a surprise. That actually sounds like a great idea. But of course, implementing those great ideas into practice is a lot harder than just boop. Which is apparently why this guy that Elon absolutely hates, called Robert Reich, wants Elon Musk to be arrested. Now, Elon's bashed this guy a lot. These guys like absolutely hate each other. But Robert Reich, he was the former labor secretary under Bill Clinton. He's a policy professor over at Berkeley. He just wrote an op-ed in The Guardian, and he goes off on Musk. And I'll give you first his recommendations, and then I'll tell you why. His arguments are that you need to rein in Musk, and that everybody should immediately boycott Tesla, stop buying Teslas, basically. Just like, if you want to ruin Musk, just ruin Tesla, so that way you fund Musk less, is the idea. Boycott X, and he's specifically referring to advertisers, saying don't advertise on X, like stop spending money on X, and just, again, burn Musk's capital, because the theory is if you burn the money Musk has, he's able to spend less on his super PAC donating to try to elect Trump, which is another thing that Robert doesn't want. He doesn't want you to vote for Trump. So that's 3. Boycott Tesla, boycott X, don't vote for Trump. Then he says the FTC should remove lies that endanger individuals on X and basically force X to comply. The U.S. should then terminate its contract with, that's 5, U.S. should terminate its contract with SpaceX, believed to be worth around $1.8 billion. And then, if Musk doesn't comply with either the EU or the U.S. in censoring content, Musk should be arrested. Now, it's interesting because you do get Reich, who makes this argument, who says that Musk is a free speech absolutist, but Reich argues that Musk has accepted 80% of the censorship requests that have come to Musk from countries like India and Turkey. Now, this information comes from a paper called, I'll probably screw it up, but it comes from a paper called El País. Anyway, that paper is based out of Madrid. They have a slight left tilt. They are considered high in facts. So let's just assume for a moment that they are. But if you just Google it, El País, and type in, I don't know, Elon Musk, 83% censor, that should come up. Yeah, there it is. Under Elon Musk, Twitter, so X, has approved 83% of the censorship requests by authoritarian governments. And they're talking about Turkey and India, which when you actually read the document or the article, they talk about how these countries have passed pretty restrictive laws on basically moderating content, some of which people say is used to help keep current parties in power. Not a surprise. That stuff happens in the United States as well. And Reich makes the argument that, see, Elon Musk says he's a free speech absolutist, but how dare he censor over here at the request of these countries? But remember for a moment, Elon Musk has always been very clear that his intention is to just follow the law of whatever land he's operating in. Now, of course, we could talk about the South America issue a little bit separately. There's a lot to talk about. I don't want this video to go on forever. But the idea here that Elon is simply following the law in Turkey or India and now trying to use that against him, I think is a little bit of a weak argument. I think this Robert guy can be a little bit of a nut job, but it's maybe that's an understatement. But it is interesting to listen to this, because when I listen to these and I read these perspectives, I can't help but regularly think to myself, man, this is unfortunately the problem with Elon having basically gone to war with people that are, I would say, more on the further left fringes. Like, you know, Lauren, my wife, she leans left. I'm way more in the center. I think I'm basically 51-49, and that sort of tilts left and right depending on, the way I wake up, I guess. But no, I'm generally just in the middle. And what's interesting is she doesn't have a hate for Tesla. She's also not, I think, an extremist. She doesn't have a hate for Tesla, doesn't have a hate for Elon. But there are a lot of folks in left-leaning parties or left-leaning ideals that say, you know what, I'm not going to buy a Tesla. I'm not going to support Elon because of his support for Trump, someone that a lot of people find vile or very offensive, who don't want to vote for Trump. And then even people who are voting for Trump do think of Trump as vile and offensive, but they're like, look, like the big argument for voting for Trump is ignore the person, focus on the policies. How are your taxes going to change, your business investments, whatever? Like, how will your family be better or worse off under a certain president, right? So anyway, I find that very interesting. But this comparison that he makes to Pavel Durov from Telegram is pretty, blunt. He's basically like, we should arrest Elon just like Pavel was arrested. Mind you, he is still stuck in France. He paid a bond to get out of jail, but he's still got a court hearing coming up, and it's wild because basically, didn't follow the censorship rules and they got arrested. And Elon's been threatened too, so it makes you wonder, is it possible that Elon could be in that boat at some point too? And I guess as somebody who just really wants to see Tesla succeed, I do get a little frustrated at the can of worms that X has opened. And I'm not convinced that X has really provided a lot of value for Tesla. But who knows? There's an argument that at some point in the future, XAI will help Tesla, or that maybe it already has. I'm not so sure about that. I know a lot of Tesla engineers have been hired over to XAI because, otherwise Microsoft was going to poach them. So the story goes. I don't know. I don't know. There's just weird stuff going on. But let me give you sort of a bottom line out of all of this. Government Efficiency Commission, big fan. I totally agree with the Wall Street Journal editorial board, and I agree that Elon would be great at giving ideas. That's not to say that whoever's president, has to listen to all of the ideas, or rather, I should say, implement all the ideas, but at least hear them out, right? As far as arresting Musk and boycotting Tesla or X, I'm not a big fan of any of this. I'm a big fan of Elon's approach of, look, everybody should just follow the law, kind of like he does in Turkey and India. Follow the law to the extent that is what the law of the land is, not, some imposition of diktats or whatever. And then ultimately focus on freedom. Big fan of that. So I'm hugely in support of that. As far as this idea, again, of boycott Tesla X, I think some of this is just loony, but that is what's happening out there. And it is unfortunately a risk factor for Tesla investors. As far as the amount of money that could be saved through a government efficiency commission, I always find that to be a little difficult to evaluate, because these government efficiency commissions, they can come up with a lot of really good ideas, but then try to practically implement those ideas, and that's a whole different ballgame. There's a reason why the joke is there's nothing more permanent than a government program. That's why there's also this joke that Democrats might introduce temporary programs, but Republicans who argue that they want to clean up the budget, they come in and they don't want to take away those programs because those programs would be seen as a tax increase, and Republicans don't want to be seen as increasing taxes. So again, Democrats, new programs. Republicans, well, we're not going to take them away because that'd be a tax increase. This is why the founding fathers came up with a system that is so, in other words, nothing gets done on purpose to try to keep the government from introducing too many crazy programs. Like Gavin Newsom's program, or at least the bill the California legislature passed last month to give undocumented immigrants up to $150,000 in down payment assistance. Now, sure, if they went to sell the home in the future, they'd have to pay a small little increase in percentage towards the home equity gain of the property, but Gavin Newsom vetoed that. But he vetoed that because it was so politically hated, and I think everybody's pretty much on the same page that he's probably going to be lining up to try to run for president in 2028. Unless Kamala wins here in 2024, she'll probably go for it a second term in 2028, so Newsom would be more like 32. Trump wins, though, you can bet your barnacles Newsom's going to be lining up in 28. He's out of California in 26. Let's go! Anyway, if you like this perspective, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Go check out stockhack.com if you want actual financial advice. We start that service and consulting service on October 1st. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Goodbye and good night.
These things that you told us here, I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.
Even though I'm a licensed financial advisor, licensed real estate broker, and becoming a stockbroker, this video is not personalized advice for you. It is not tax, legal, or otherwise personalized advice tailored to you. This video provides generalized perspective, information, and commentary. Any third-party content I show shall not be deemed endorsed by me. This video is not and shall never be deemed reasonably sufficient information for the purposes of evaluating a security or investment decision. Any links or promoted products are either paid affiliations or products or services we may benefit from. I also personally operate an actively managed ETF. I may personally hold or otherwise hold long or short positions in various securities, potentially including those mentioned in this video. However, I have no relationship to any issuer other than HouseHack, nor am I presently acting as a market maker. Make sure if you're considering investing in HouseHack to always read the PPM at househack.com.